Hello there, this is Rom Wills coming back at you with yet another bookcase video. So y'all know when I do these bookcase videos, Rom's going, you ain't getting Carl Rom, you getting Professor Rom. Yeah. And I just recorded some for Rom, no, for my Vimeo on demand channel. So y'all see a preview for that later on today. I ain't even had to change clothes for it. And just real quick, before I get into what I was going to talk about, check out an interview I did with these brothers, Carbon Ops Rawcast. I had to make sure I got their name right, so I wrote it down. Check them out, right? Check them out, because I did a video with them. The link for it is in the description box. Show them some love. Tell them Uncle Rom sent you. These brothers are going to blow up. Get on the train now. Trust me. Trust me. It was a great interview, and we're definitely going to be doing a part 2 to the interview, but check it out. The link is in the description box. But I'm going to talk about assortative mating. Assortative mating. Now, I've talked about that before. I did another video on that a while ago, specifically focusing on social assortative mating. Now, what is assortative mating? What is it? Basically, it's saying, in general, it's saying that people will mate with someone who is similar to them. Now, you have two levels of it. You have the genetic level and you have the social level. And the reason I'm even going into it, because I've been talking about class this week. Now, y'all had Karam talk about it, but now we got to get deeper into it because it's a real thing. It's a real thing. Indeed, the on-demand video that's coming out later today will be focused specifically on social class and black relationships. It's going to be one of my deeper ones. I might even have on the same shirt. Hey, record everything at once as best as possible. Y'all know I just like sitting around after the gym, just sitting around chilling. Anyway. Like I said, there's two types of assortative mating. Now, with genetic assortative mating, it's basically a situation where people will mate with someone who is similar to themselves. Similar to themselves. And ironically, it's not even a racial thing. That goes in more to social assortative mating. But as far as the phenotype, as far as the body build. So you might get two people who are ectomorphic, tall and slim, who mate with each other. You might get two people who are more athletic in build, mate with each other. You might get two people who are more endomorphic, mate with each other. And that's actually a common thing. When you ever heard that old saying where you see a couple together, you say, okay, y'all either in a relationship or y'all brother and sister. And it's usually one or the other. But that's a common thing. See, here's the thing. Let me go deep on y'all. And this is not even talked about in the assortative mating thing, but this gets more into what Master Teacher BGS will call he talks about the anima and the animus. In a way, people look for themselves in a mate. That's a very, very subliminal thing. They look for themselves, and they will tend to find someone who is similar to them to be most attractive. That's why, look, like for example, myself. I go crazy over those women who got that big old butt though. But look at me, I'm not a small dude. I'm not a small dude. I'm built like that linebacker. So I like those thicker women. But that's natural. Yeah, I can deal with other types of women, but it's most natural. The women I've gotten along with best they look like a physical opposite of myself. And a lot of other people do that. You will tend to find that person the most attractive. Now, let me be clear. That's not 100%. Nothing's 100%. When you're talking about relationships, it's more art than science. Despite some dudes out here trying to measure faces and stuff, it's an art. It depends on many factors. In fact, that's where it probably gets more into that social assortative mating. But with the genetic thing, see, on a subliminal level, we look for someone similar to us. And that's based partly on us. That's based partly on our DNA. Remember, I said the original imprint for a man or a woman is the opposite sex parent. or parental figure. But it's especially the case, it's especially the case when it's genetic. When it's genetic, you look for a certain body build and you're not even sure why. And for those who have a problem with the whole imprint concept, look up Love Maps by this gentleman. I think it's John Money. I think it's Dr. John Money. But look up the term love maps. Western science knows about this. They know about a lot of stuff. Only difference between what I might talk about sometime and what Western science talks about is just different terms. And in fact, let me just throw out sometimes you got some people who are on that metaphysic tip. They 20 years ahead of what sometimes Western science will talk about, but that's another conversation. But check it out, though. Check it out. When you talk about assortative mating, well, that's that thing. That's the person that drives us crazy. That's the person, when they got that certain body build, you go crazy. Now, like I said, it's not 100% because somebody might get on here and say, well, I don't do that. Okay, fine, you don't. But it's a general thing. And especially it's a case where a lot of times in like many cultures, like if you look at people from many cultures, they look alike for a reason. I give you an example, Ethiopians. If you look at them, they all look alike. It's not a lot of genetic variety in many groups, in many ethnic groups. Because understand something, and something deeper, people might not want to hear, but I got to share it. When you look at ethnic groups, they basically started in the wombs of a few women, maybe even one woman. Because as a family expands and people mate, believe it or not, a lot of people who mate are very distant cousins. Very distant cousins. I know there's a ooh factor there, but it's just a reality. And that's why you got some groups, they very similar. Now, it could be a bad thing if there's some type of disease or something. Like you get some ethnic groups, they have a disease that's prominent. I was told, I can't remember which Jewish group, but they had a certain disease that was very prominent. That's because they were probably, they mating within the group. Now, the only bad thing about, the negative thing about assortative mating is that thing, like a certain negative traits might stay within the group a long time. And that's why it's actually important, like some groups actually consciously bring in new genetic material. I ain't gonna go there. There's something bigger happening, and I want to keep the channel. That's when we get into what people would call some conspiracy stuff. So we're not gonna go there. But that's just a reality. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. Indeed, like there was a young lady I met and a while ago, and because of her particular, I mean, she was black, but she was within one of the many black groups, ethnic groups within the African American community, which I shared a similar background with. So I was checking based on where she was. I actually checked with her. I was like, because it was a definite physical click, but I was like, what's your grandfather's name? And I'll just tell you, I'll share this much with you. When I talk about like different groups within the black community, remember, it's not talked about as much, but there's maybe 8 to 13 different DNA groups, 8 to 13. One of them is actually more Irish. They black, but they Irish. They got strong connections with Irish DNA. And then another one, which my father's family was a part of, was like the Louisiana Creole. So I had met a woman from that background from the same region where my family lived. I was like, oh, what's your grandfather's name? Okay, you sure? You sure? Yeah, I had to check because we were very similar physically. So, you know, that's the thing. So that's the only thing with it, but it happens. And that's how many people might choose their mate. Now, like I said, it's not 100%. It is 90. It's actually better, especially for some groups, to bring in outside genetic material just to diversify. But it's a reality. But then when we talk about, let's go on to the next one about social assortative mating. Social, where people mate more on social factors, not so much genetic factors. Indeed, when you get the exceptions, the many exceptions to the assortative mating, often is based on social mating. So it could be anything. It could be this social class. despite what people think and despite what many people want to do, the overwhelming majority of people, especially in Western culture, mate based on social class. When you talk about some bougie people, they mate with other bougie people. When you talk about some street people or lower class ratchets, they often are with another ratchet. That's why sometimes a dude might see a woman, she all fine, got that body, she ain't messing with him. She also got some tattoos and piercings. She looking at him, he all clean cut. No, she looking for somebody who got some tats himself, probably got some piercings, probably smoking, all this other stuff. I get into this more in the video that's coming out later today. But, you know, social, cultural, religious, you know, somebody might say, hey, you got to practice this particular religion. In fact, within the Black Christian church, especially, but other churches, they'll say, hey, if you don't practice this path, I ain't messing with you. I remember I met a woman back in the 80s who was from Iran. And she was Muslim, and she was straight up. Well, if you were Muslim, she's fine too. But, you know, you get some people who do that. That's assortative mating. Like it's one thing, like you get a lot of people out here that talk about the biology and stuff. You know, they'll say, well, you got to have a square jaw. He got to be this height. But even with assortative mating don't go for that. So if somebody, you know, 5'9" with a round face and a stocky body, well, shit. And the woman, you know, or that's what the woman is. She might be like 5'3", you know, got that little thick body or something. She'll go for that guy. She'll go for that round face 5'9" guy before she go through a 6'2" tall guy. That's assortative mating. That's where it's important. But when somebody tries to say it's objective or something, nah, that don't really happen. But it is a definite thing when you talk about culture and stuff, when you talk about religion, like, or, you know, what school you go to or something like that. They looking to mate on those. And even like when I mentioned the race thing, you get a bunch of people, they stick within their race. I mean, that's just it. The only person they're going to consider is someone within their race. That's assortative mating. Or their own ethnic group. That's assortative mating. You know, anytime it's a cultural factor, not a pure biological factor, when it's a cultural factor. And, you know, that's why I talk about, you know, I was talking about, you know, I had a video talking about the hypergamy movement and everything. Men and women are both assortative to an extent. Now, like I said, you got some exceptions, but the exceptions are few. When people mate, they primarily mate with people who have some similarity to them. You know, even if it's not genetic, they still got to get along. They still got to want to do the same things. If you're talking about dating, you know, it's a big difference. And this is an example I gave in a on-demand video that's coming out later today. This is the example I gave. I said, you know, if you get a woman, she's lower class, her idea of a fun date is, you know, getting some liquor from the local store, hitting the weed man up, well, unless you're in a state where weed is legal, you know, maybe getting some like bad food from the low-grade corner store or something, and then sitting back in front of a TV, you know, at the place where the air mattress is on the floor and it's messy. That might be her idea of a good date. Whereas, you know, the dude, well, one, I wonder why he would mess with that woman. That's another story. But the dude, he will be more, you know, let's go to this art festival. Let's go to this book festival. You know, let's go to this piano concert. It's two different things. So many people, they stay within their groups ultimately. That's what they find attractive. Because, see, I'm going to tell you what, with attraction in general, people actually look for somebody who reflects them, or at least what they think reflects them at the deepest level. Remember, I had briefly mentioned the anima and the animus. And, you know, in my circles, we'll call it the sexual id. But then that extends not just the inner self, but the outer self. You know, if I got this Ralph Lauren shirt on, I'm looking all intellectual. I'm looking for that woman who's going to be intellectual too, who at least got the look. She's looking like some tackhead. The only way I see her is if she's just right in front of me. I'll probably just walk through something, don't even pick her up. And that's everybody, but that's assortative mating. You look for someone similar. You know, you look for someone who has that look, that vibe culturally, and then y'all can actually get along. But it's a very real thing. Now, you got some people who got some issues against it. They want to go, oh, that's cool. It's going to be tough for you, but cool if you can do it. Maybe if you're trying to legitimately raise yourself. Like, but see, some people, they think it can work without them changing themselves. No, it don't work that way. It really doesn't work that way. But it's a very important thing. See, both these things, the genetic, assortative mating, and the social, a lot of it's very subliminal. Sometimes you're not even thinking about it. Because, especially at the genetic level, who do we consider attractive? We only going to consider certain people attractive. Some people ain't. You know, some people, I don't care how many other people think they're attractive. If they don't, if we're being moved by that genetic thing, we looking for somebody who reflects us. That's just a reality. And then the social thing will fit into that social group we want to fit into. Because then we're comfortable with them because we can just live our lives. If you're that type of man who goes to the art festivals, go to the sophisticated stuff, go to the political, go to the political rallies, whatever. Or maybe deep into your spiritual path. You want a woman who's going to do the same. Ifs, ands, and buts. Now, some people might try to force somebody, but think about what you're forcing them into. And the forcing usually doesn't work. But when somebody's already there, click. That's a very powerful thing. Now, I would suggest for somebody who wants to really get into it, and like I said, there's pros and cons all the way, especially with the genetic thing. Let me make that clear before somebody get in here and say, well, there could be, no. Especially with the genetic thing. There are pros and cons. But I would suggest looking that up. In fact, I'll put a link to the Wikipedia article there. What I would suggest is read it there and then look at any notes in there. Because if you really want to study anything, and this is, since I'm in front of the bookcase doing Professor Rom, whenever you look at anything, do any research. Don't just read the book or the article. Like when I read a book and I'm in research mode, I pay just as much attention to the notes. Indeed, a really good, well-researched book that's really on an academic level is going to have probably a third of the book might even be notes. It's going to be significant. That's how you learn stuff. Indeed, some of the things I talk about even as car Ron, it's because I looked it up, then I look at the notes. Then I look that up and then I follow their notes. That's how to properly do research. So, I'm going to share a link to the Assortative Mating article on Wikipedia, but then look at the notes. And, whenever there's any links in there, click them and then it could take you further than you can truly understand it. Because even what I'm talking now, I'm just giving the surface. And to be honest, I haven't really studied it. Because I already had an understanding of things like the anima and animus, the sexual id, and stuff like that. To me, this is Western culture catching up. And I always understood. Y'all notice I talk about class a lot, so I always understood that as well. So, but if somebody really wants to learn those things, look into that. Look into all of that. Look at the pros and the cons. Because even I mentioned the ones with genetics, assortative mating. I mentioned that because sometimes if there's a certain disease or something within the group, that could stay there. And fresh genes could help the group. And I wonder if somebody going to pick up on something bigger with what I just said. I'll see. But then the social thing, sometimes I'm going to be honest, even though people stay in their social group, sometimes it can actually help a person if they go outside of their circle. So, and just to be clear, you can't say whether it's good or bad. It just is. It's all relative, and it's all relative to your situation, okay? So anyway, that's all I have for today. I know I'm sitting here with this shirt on and my pajama pants on. Actually, I am. So anyway, Anyway, this is Professor Rom out. Peace and blessings, everybody.